Kislev versus Cathay is probably my favorite matchup to play from either side in the current setup. I mean, two mortal factions. It's very much classic Total War. You get all of the leadership mechanics, although Kislev does slightly bypass that with the By Our Blood passive, but still very much sort of the flavor of the Total Wars that we know and love from ages past. And therefore, yeah, it's my favorite matchup. This one submitted by Romulan Dog. Very interesting. We've got Katarine versus Miao Ying. So the power ladies of Warhammer 3 facing off in a battle of the fates on Arnheim. One of the things about this matchup is I actually think that Cathay has one of the best tools for dealing with the OP war sleds, which is cannons. And just generally, you know, the fact that they can zerg ultra wide, and in their starting army now especially, if you set up your build right, you can take a ton of units and generally have a very nice combined arms force, which is kind of the flavor of them, right? And it does remind me in some ways of how the Empire is very likely to play Total War Warhammer 3 once they get added. You'll have better options for cavalry and mobility, but sort of that mass zerg of cost-effective low-tier units will be the name of the game there for sure. Kislev plays in a somewhat similar style, but for the armies today, we've got Katarine starting for Kislev. Little Grom also can be decent here if he can stay safe from cannons. It kind of gives them a secondary option to shoot at rather than the light war sleds, which we have one of. Winged Lancers as well, one. Got two Armored Kossars, great weapons, two Kossars with spears, and two Kossite Dervishes. In reserve, one Bear Cav. Got two sleds, one heavy, one light. Tsar Guard, Streltsy, one more Winged Lancer, one more Armored Kossar, one regular Kossar, and two more Dervishes. So a nice sort of grab bag of different units here. Miao Ying for the western provinces of Cathay, of course. Astromancer as well, Jade Warriors Halberds, two Jade Crossbowmen, three Jade Swordsmen, and three Peasant Long Spears. In reserve, Longma Riders, we've got two Grand Cannons, two Jade Lancers, two Halberds, another Shielded Crossbow, three Peasant Archers, and two Peasant Long Spears. Of course, Arnheim is also a map where cannons can operate quite effectively, so Cathay does have a pretty good time on this map. It's a little bit tricky. The Romulan Dog is going to push the high ground immediately. Now, I would say for Cathay, you probably want to have at least one cannon in your starting army. Bringing out cannons as reinforcements, depending on the map, is actually pretty decent because you can bring out units instantly to protect them, and usually, depending on the map, they can fire in at whatever's in range, at least at like one of the center objectives immediately, right? As soon as you bring them in. So, it would follow then that, you know, cannons, of course, can just start applying damage to the dread sleds very, very quickly. And in general, you know, the light peasant horsemen can sort of stop them up okay, and just in general, different units working in harmony can definitely take care of them. So we'll see. Right now, Romulan Dog's going to go up on the high ground, which gives him a degree of protection from the artillery. Cathay could spawn in artillery up here, but they're going to start in the trees. They'll have to maneuver out here, and that also gives them pretty poor line of sight. Even with the good arc of the Cathayan artillery, it's still a little bit awkward to try and hit units that are close to this cliff face right here. Maybe even like a part of this objective would be blocked, if not all of it. So it is to Kislev's advantage to deploy up on the high ground here, try and take this, and maybe try and push down. The problem is that it does force you into this sort of hot gates right here. Choke point where Cathay could definitely set up a nice concave, especially with missile units. Then, though, you have a possibility of a flank attack here in the open from Kislev, especially with a lot of cavalry. We do have one Kossite Dervish just hidden in the woods right there, ready to go up and around and try and get at some artillery. Of course, Kossite Dervishes, because of the By Our Blood passive, it makes them the best tools in the game, probably, for nuking artillery pieces, or at least guaranteeing that you shut them down for a decent amount of time. So, let's see how they do. Let's see how they do. Cannons are being brought in immediately. They probably could have been in the starting army, but still. Some more Peasant Long Spears as well. The Astromancer getting really aggressive here, going after Little Grom. Little Grom has unleashed a few shots. They did buff Little Grom. Oh, no, he's actually just walking by, giving a little wave as he rides by. Little Grom did get a little bit of a buff. I believe they buffed his missile damage, so it's pretty good single target. Especially like Miao Ying if she were to transform, but it's not super efficient at shooting at infantry. Even shooting at cavalry units, it's definitely less efficient than your typical cannon. piece because it's just way overkilling the models and it's only hitting a few of them, right? So it's a little bit weird to use in practice because the speed is so low too. It's like, you know, against a lot of factions that you might want to shoot big monsters with, it can be a little bit tricky to protect. I don't know. I still need to play around with it a little bit more and see. It might be decent in the Nurgle matchup, but I'm not sure. I don't know. Kislev can do a few things in that matchup, I think. But anyway, do have some sleds up on the high ground, the light sleds, cutting away these longbows. They've got tons of support here. These Kossars could just open up with their pistols and shred those longbows. Pistols do quite a bit of AP damage. See, Kossar spears moving up. More light war sleds have been deployed and developed. These Winged Lancers also just hanging back. Managed to catch that Astromancer and push him away. Cannons trying to get in range to shoot them, but Romulan Dog maneuvering away. Now this is where Little Grom becomes a little bit of a magnet for fire, so he's deploying the Kossovite Dervishes at the same time to try and push up and around. Cathay's got a really good position here, though. This is dangerous to let Cathay just push forward and set up on these two objectives on this map, especially now they can block these little hot gates, although you will be getting a downhill attack against them, which gives you an advantage on weapon strength and missile damage, I want to say, if I remember right. Pretty substantial one, too, considering how extreme this slope is. Or maybe it's charge bonus. Probably it's charge bonus. At the very least, the calculation for collision does change, I believe. And, oh, man. Interesting that I'm not sure if the intention was to just let the chariots bust through completely, but that was a pretty impactful charge there. Even here into the front of braced spears, because of that downhill effect, they just punch straight through. Massive collision damage. Of course, sleds being insanely OP right now they do a lot of damage. I say insanely OP, but you see how quickly this one gets dragged down by concentrated crossbow fire. Even the peasant long spears are helping in this situation, definitely. Even with the increased harmony radius, though, not that many units are actually in harmony here. This cannon getting extra reload rate will be nice. So far, it hasn't done too much to the Little Grom, but Dervishes getting through, swamping the Jade Crossbowmen. Not in time to save this one sled, but the other sled does get through. Nice flank attack, just disrupting this entire Cathayan formation here, doing a ton of damage. The other Dervishes come through. They manage to stop up this sort of group of peasant archers for some time, but they actually fail to get the artillery. So let's see more Dervishes and Winged Lancers up in the back line here, intercepting the Jade Lancers here. Winged Lancers looking for targets. Let's see what they charge into. Probably those crossbowmen. Nope, they're going to switch out and just probably, yep, actually commit on the crossbowmen. Looks like they'll get a little bit of those spears as well, but that's fine. Dervishes eventually come through and shut down that cannon, which probably needed to happen a little bit earlier just to help salvage Little Grom. But Little Grom does get the Fire Blood passive, and it's used up most of its ammunition already, so I'm not sure if it's paid for itself. Probably has not. But anyway, we've got some Zargard moving up. Zargard are a great unit for holding against Cathay because they don't have a lot of options for armor-piercing anti-infantry damage. And up here on the high ground, these Kossars, armored Kossars, just in a defensive position. A little bit of Talons of the Night to tear them into the earth. So far, so good. Looks like Katharine's going to get an Ice Lance, little magic missile through the side of the Jade Warriors. Does a ton of damage. Oh, sort of the Amber Spear style, right? Really nice little skill side shot there. Beautiful positioning. And the Cathayan player just sitting statically for the most part with your infantry, which might seem like not the right idea, but in general, just kind of defending this objective seems okay. I might try and push forward and keep Cathay a little bit closer to their deployment zone. Just to buy you a little bit of extra time with space that you have here. But once the peasant archers and crossbowmen pull up, I'm going to start to do a lot of damage, just shredding those armored Kossars. Even the Dervishes, as they come through, won't be doing too much. But let's see. Anyway, yeah, with a massive peasants, actually do a pretty good charge there. Managed to get some damage on those peasant archers. Like we've got a big ice sheet as well, just to slow down the movement of all these Cathayan units, not allow them to get away from the cavalry, and just in general hold them in place while Kislev advances. We've got more armored Kossars, great weapons coming through. The Dervishes, the armored Kossars, great weapons, use up all their ammunition, so I've already probably racked up quite a bit of value. 4 kills, yeah, 182 value, maybe not too much. Probably shooting shielded Jade Warriors actually. Duel of the Fates between Katarine and Bear Katarine and Miao Ying. Miao Ying's going to get a little bit of a better end of that engagement initially. Cathay now pulling away. Trying to get back to some support. So the engagement's not necessarily going great for Kislev. If we could see the army damage value, it's probably pretty close to even, if not slightly in favor of Cathay at this point. But here come the winged hussars. Yes, there are winged hussars here, but also the bear calves and the heavy war sleds. This huge strike force is going to move in and start to just roll up a lot of units here and try and even out the scales. Romulan Dog's not too far behind on victory tickets. He's not too far behind on army damage value either. This is a nice way to get back in. The dervishes about to get that Buyer Blood passive. Cannon shots go directly over their head. It did get momentarily interrupted by the Jade Warrior halberds, which is definitely not great. Wanted to try and get through to the Grand Cannons, but if Romulan Dog can notice in time before they perish, that Buyer Blood will allow them to do so. Looks like he does. And this is why I say these guys are so strong. Even when you blunder and make a little bit of a mistake, they can still get in and actually physically shut down the unit, at least for a short amount of time. This allows the Hussars to now fire in, and Bowmen firing at artillery crew is also a great way to shut artillery down, because most artillery crews have no armor. In fact, I can't really think of one off the top of my head that actually has armor innately that's not, you know, like mounted up in a wagon or something. Anyway, speaking of being mounted up, from the Cathayan player's side, you really need to be on top of unsummoning units in Domination when you're playing as Cathay, especially when your artillery gets dismounted and you can't remount it. It's much better to just get the refund from unsummoning it and then resummon it back in so it's mounted again. It does take a little bit of points. It's not the best, but you get a little bit of points back on the refund if they still have enough HP. Hussars, great weapons. Going to be great at holding spears, too. This is just a horrible engagement for these Jade Lancers to try and force their way through. Kislev very well defending here. I mean, even these Jade Warrior halberds trading like kind of mediocre against the Hussar spears. Bit of a weird engagement, but anyway. Miao Ying definitely making her presence felt. We take a look here. Katarine is still on the field, sort of protecting her back line, trying to chase off. One thing, when units are routing and shattered like this, it's in the other player's advantage, right? Like, Romulan Dog actually has a pretty big advantage because so many Cathayan units were not unsummoned when they were low. They actually were shattered. The whole time they're shattered, they're not recuperating health, and they can't be resummoned. So the Cathay player could actually get supply blocked here and not have any more units to summon because, yeah, they just too many of their units are routed or shattered across the battlefield. Especially with mortal factions, it's not so important for the demon factions and for undead in the future, but for mortal factions, it's definitely very, very important. Particularly if you have a lot of low leadership units. Which, I mean, peasant long spears have decent enough leadership with harmony and with support, but they're definitely nothing to write home about. Miao Ying now taking an engagement against these the bear calves. They got a nice surround on her. A little bit of Talents of the Night. Gonna do some AoE damage. Doesn't do too much to the bears. Definitely does some. They don't want to just stand and take it. But now Streltsy been deployed, moving up and in. Gonna use their armor-piercing axe guns to great effect. And Kislev has now secured all 3 objectives, and just in time, 4,000 victory tickets. Cathay was closing in on victory. Now, though, Romulan Dog's got to hold all 3 objectives until he can get close enough. He doesn't need to hold a full 3 cap anymore, which is probably, yeah, right around like 3,100, 3,200 points. So he's not too far off from that. If Cathay counterattacks and actually manages to force their way back onto the center objective, that might be okay. They are actually capping the side objective, though, as well. So, yeah, as long as one of these 2 can hold, at least for, you know, another 30 seconds to a minute or so, Romulan Dog definitely puts himself in a position to come back. Nice rear charge here from these Hussars. And this is one situation. I don't know if these Jade Warriors have formation attack on. It's a little bit hard to tell, but 100% you want to make sure you're turning it off. It's tricky in Domination because you have to do it live in real time, whereas in land battle you can just do it with your entire army and before the battle even starts. But it is a little bit tough to remember. I know I have had a hard time remembering to do it on units that I summon in. Thankfully, with the larger starting army, again, you can remember to do it on units before battle, but in the heat of battle, it can be a little bit trickier for sure. Kislev Cavalry runs in, though. All the wing lancers, Cosby dervishes are going to swing in here, strike down what's left of the Cathayan infantry. Bear Cav holding out very firmly. They actually dealing the armor piercing damage, while the Kossars just kind of, the Cosby dervishes just kind of surround here. Dread sleds also still online. The heavy war sleds without any cannons or crossbow focus take them down have been mostly free to operate here, although they have definitely taken some HP damage. And with straight up lead now, Romulan Dog definitely in a position to finish this game strong. Let's just keep it in cinematic cam. This final engagement, Miao Ying gets the support of her Longmas, trying desperately to do anything here, but none of these flying units can actually capture, so while it looks cool, it's not actually that useful. It's like Little Grom also involved in this fight. It has 110 weapon strength, but for whatever reason, Little Grom has a hard time doing attack animations. Not 100% sure why, but anyway. Another ice sheet here just to slow down Miao Ying, make sure she can't escape. And that should be GG for Cathay. We'll fast forward through the end here as the tickets tick up. And there it is, folks. Hopefully you enjoyed that. It's definitely a fun matchup. I'll be bringing you more soon from the Cathayan side, sort of giving you my thoughts there. But interesting, you know, even though it got 177 kills, Little Grom still wasn't very useful here. I mean, maybe just the artillery pressure, the extra attacked by artillery leadership debuff might be enough in some situations to pay for itself, but I'm still not convinced. Katarine, though, definitely very good here on the bear. Is not too much at risk from fighting something scary enough to actually kill her efficiently. Like, she can trade okay with support against the Cathayan dragon characters, and pretty much all the Cathayan characters, to be honest. Pretty decent here. I like that quite a bit. Red sleds, of course, they're pretty good, although they are surprisingly fairly well limited here. Only one of them actually pays for its sting with the new cost scheme. The winged lancers, though, definitely do a great job along with the Cosby dervishes. I mean, just excellent cavalry play overall. We saw a number of really nicely timed and placed rear charges there, and in general, just using those cavalry to make sure you're picking up routing units, not allowing them to come back, getting them shattered, right? I mean, I was talking earlier about how the Cathayan player was not unsummoning their units, but also give credit to Romulan Dog for keeping those units routing and shattering them, and that way limiting his opponent's ability to resummon his units. Yeah, very, very good stuff. The Sargard also come in and hold pretty admirably. Like I said, not a lot on Cathay's roster besides magic. Really, they can deal with them efficiently. And Miao Ying does get quite a bit of damage value herself, but the rest of the army, in many cases, struggles. I mean, I'm not sure about taking this many Shielded Jade Warriors. They don't do a ton for you in this matchup. I think maybe you go with just more halberds, and maybe, like I said, a cannon in the starting army. Probably want, yeah, 2 to 3 cannons is definitely in the range of what I would take. Longmas also, I don't totally hate him here. Kislev lacks flying tools altogether, and their only recourse is to try and shoot up and at them. But the problem with Longmas is they actually have to charge down onto the ground, and when that happens, they'll probably get surrounded by Kislev cavalry and killed. But anyway, yeah, you do need some high mass units. Generally, I like the Peasant Horsemen just because they're cheap. You can throw them away and then resummon them pretty quickly. And just in general, they'll give you the mass to block things up, while your actual damage dealers, which is your infantry and shooting units, can come in and get the work done. So anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.